Well, hello there. My name is Don Pickerel, and it's good to be with you. I am grateful for the time away. It was good to see family. It wasn't quite what we had anticipated. Sharon spent, I'd say, 90% of the time in bed. She just hurt so bad and couldn't get out of bed, but it still was good to be away. I'm here, and I was looking forward to being back here today. One of the experiences I had, I told House, is one Sunday morning I went to church, and it was a church that had pews. And, you know, as a guest, you get there a little bit early. And I sat down, and I had my social distancing, and all of a sudden, everybody started coming in, and like they were right there. They were invading my space. And it was the first time in like a year and a half, I guess, whenever this all started, that I thought, what are they? I need to find another spot. But then I'm thinking, if I find another spot, they're going to think something's weird about me trying to get out of there or whatever. But anyway, so I'm thankful for our setup, that we have a little bit of space and still have the community. So anyway, take your Bibles and open them with me to the book of Psalms. The book of Psalms, Psalm 13. I want to thank House and all of those, and Phil and the others who kind of picked up and took care of the responsibilities in my absence. Just grateful that I don't go away and fret, that I know that they're able to handle things. Psalm 13 is where I want us to go today. Psalm 13. Let me tell you where the motivation for this comes from, because it's interesting to me. The first week we were there, my youngest daughter and her daughter came and stayed with us. And she gave me a book to read on vacation. The title of the book is When the Stars Disappear. It's a book by Mark Talbot. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but it's a book on suffering. Now, that's not quite what you think of when you think of going to the beach and reading a book. Read a book on suffering. And to be very frank, I had not thought about, and I hope this makes sense. I mean, y'all know me. I had not thought about what I have been going through or what Sharon's been going through as suffering. You know, suffering is always for somebody else. And I guess I never thought about it that way, but evidently she had. But I did read it, and there were a lot of good things in the book, and it was out of that I felt like when I got back today, I just wanted to kind of share my heart and just be with you, and so that's what we're going to do. And so let me read this 13th Psalm and ask if you would to stand with me in honor of the reading of God's Word. And so this is a Psalm of David. And so David writes, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long will my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and hear me, O Lord my God. Enlighten my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemies say, I have prevailed against him. Lest those who trouble me rejoice when I am moved. but I have trusted in your mercy, and my heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. So let's pray together. Father, I thank you again for the great privilege of being with these people. And Father, I thank you for your heart toward us, and that whatever we go through, we don't doubt your goodness. And Father, today as we open your word and we look at this and we think about the difficult times of life, the hard things that, Lord, that you would enlighten our eyes, that you would give us understanding and peace and joy and perspective. So, Lord, we look to you. Open our ears, open our hearts, open our eyes, and may our hearing be worship to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. This is what is known as one of the Psalms of Lament. Actually, I don't know whether you know this. It's interesting to me. I think it's really important to know that over a third of the Psalms, there are 150 Psalms in the book of Psalms, over a third of them are Psalms of Lament. Now, I'm not sure what all that says, but one thing I know for sure is that tough times are not unusual, even for the people of God. I read of a survey that was conducted. They would interview people as they left church, and the survey found that 60 to 75%, what it said, 60 to 75% of the worshipers as they were leaving said they came to church that day with some significant pain either in their life or in the lives of someone that was close to them. And so we know that hurting is not unusual, that lamenting, the problem or the pain that prompts the lamenting is not unusual. So what I want to do is just kind of outline this very simply today and talk about it. And the first thing I want to talk about is David's pain. We're not sure 100% about the background of this psalm at all, but there is a chance that this comes in the middle of David being pursued by King Saul. Let me kind of give you a little bit of the backstory. David defeated Goliath, and after David defeated Goliath, the people began to sing this song, and it was this: Saul has slain his thousands, David his 10,000s. And so David had become the hero of Israel. And as he grew in popularity among the people, Saul became more and more jealous. And it wasn't long before his jealousy grew into a rage, and his rage grew into an obsession. And it got to be that the only thing that Saul could think about was killing David. And so he would hunt him down. Now, David hadn't done anything wrong, but here he was running for his life. And what made it even worse for David was that he tried everything he could to do what was right. He tried to honor Saul when that opportunity came. He wanted to honor the Lord with his life, but things were not going the way David had anticipated or thought that they would go. And this persecution, this hunting David by Saul, lasted 8 or 9 years. And David just felt like banging his head against the wall. Lord, what is going on? I've done everything you've asked me to do. I've tried to do what's right, and yet nothing changes. And it's out of that frustration and out of that disappointment that he writes this. 4 times in the first 2 verses, he writes, "How long, O Lord?" You can feel the tiredness in his spirit. You can hear the frustration in his questions. He just couldn't understand God's silence. Why had not God done something? Why did God seem so far away? And the truth is, as I said, probably every follower of Christ in one way or another has felt like David at some point in their lives. And the thing about this suffering is its ability to make you feel so isolated. You know? Now, David wasn't by himself when he wrote this. He was surrounded by a number of people, but he still felt alone. And you can just tell he felt this sense of isolation from God. And I will tell you, and I don't necessarily do well at sharing all of this, but I will tell you this last year and these last few months have been some of the hardest things to go through. And I have felt, even though I am surrounded by people that I love and who I know love me, but this is the most alone I think I've ever felt in my life. But that's what that suffering does. It just causes you to feel that sense of isolation. And it can be overwhelming. And you look at this psalm, this is not Joe anybody, this is David. I mean, this is the man after God's own heart. This is the apple of God's eye, and yet he struggled, just like we struggle. But so did Moses, so did Job, so did Naomi and Elijah, so did Jeremiah, and on and on and on the list goes. Maybe it's physical health. Maybe it's something that's in your life and it just doesn't change, and you prayed about it and you prayed about it. And now the question that you're asking is, how long is this going to go on? So we begin to think, what should we do when we feel like God's silent? Well, one of the other lessons I think we learn from a third of the Psalms being laments is that God never stopped his people from being honest. He never stopped his people from being honest. Their lament, in a way, if you think about it, was an indication of their faith in him, because they could share their heart because they knew that God was listening. I mean, you read those Psalms of lament, and one of the things you notice is that in every one of them, the people are not talking about God. In every one of them, the people are talking to God. Very important. That's one of the neat things about the Psalms. There's just an honesty here. You can see it in the writers. They're just pouring their heart out to God. So the first thing we have to see is that this whole psalm is a prayer. It's a prayer. David, in the middle of his struggle, just goes to God in prayer. And if we're not careful, we have this idea that it's a sign of weakness or it's a lack of faith if we lament before God. See, that's not what the people of God are supposed to do. And so we stuff that in and we hide it and we act like everything is okay, but that's not what you see in Scripture. Actually, just the opposite. The people felt like they could lament before God because he knew his heart was toward them, right? That he would hear them, that his steadfast loving kindness was both basic to his character and it represented all of who he was. Now, let me go ahead and say, because I don't want there to be any misunderstanding, I don't think there's ever a time when we need to be disrespectful of the Lord. He's God. And as Christ followers, we are his children. But he always calls us to be honest and humble and transparent before him. And you can question what God is doing or not doing, but always honor him. I was thinking about it. That's the difference. Remember when Moses had brought the people out of Egypt, God had led them out of Egypt through Moses, and they began to complain. They did not go to God in prayer. They just griped. They just wanted to to people, and God judged them for that. But what David did is a humble, simple bearing of his heart to God. And actually, to be less than honest with God shows a lack of understanding of who God is. Right? Because he already knows what's in our heart. He knows when our spirit is troubled. So if you try to hide your heart and the truth of what you're feeling from God, it damages the relationship because it shows a lack of faith on your part. Because it's that faith that gives you the confidence to humbly yet boldly come to the throne of grace and pour out to God what you're wrestling with. Because you know that he's promised that he's not going to walk out on you and he's not going to turn his back on you. Talbot makes the point in his book, suffering prompts the psalmist to run to God because they knew he loved them, just like children run to their parents when they're frightened or hurt. And we read this and we see what David felt, and he let God know he felt forgotten. He said, how long, Lord, will you forget me forever? It wasn't just a passing feeling. This obviously had been going on for quite a while. He felt forgotten, but then he also felt forsaken. How long will you hide your face from me? Well, the Jews believed that with the face of the Lord was towards you, it was a sign of blessing. It was a sign of favor for God's face to be towards you. That's why the benediction in Numbers 11, the Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. You see, so David's suffering, whatever it was, whatever David was going through, led to this sense of abandonment that evidently God's favor was no longer on his life. See, because our line of reasoning is if we enjoy God's favor, then we won't go through this. And surely God will get us delivered from it. So therefore, God must be withholding his favor. And it seems like the longer it went, the more David began to feel that not only had God forgotten him, but God had forsaken him. And there's a difference. When somebody forgets you, that's kind of accidental. But when somebody forsakes you, that's intentional. That's purposeful, right? So the temptation is to think that not just that God has gotten busy and forgotten us, but rather that he has chosen to ignore what we're going through. But it ought to sound familiar because that's the same thing that Jesus cried out from the cross. Father, why have you forsaken me? So he felt forsaken and he felt frustrated. How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? This isn't something that just came and went, but David dealt with it every day. Every morning when he woke up, it was still there. And I'm sure what made it really tough for David is he remembered when Samuel the prophet came and anointed him as king, the next king of Israel. I am sure this is not how David thought it was going to turn out. But that's what makes it so hard, is we have this idea of how life is going to be, and it holds such promise, and we have all of the promises of the good things that God has for us. But then something happens. Our marriage isn't like we dreamed it would be. Our children make less than wise decisions. Our job doesn't fulfill us like we thought. Our health leaves us. Well, surely things will get better. And we wake up the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and nothing's changed. See, David's relationship with the Lord was a heart relationship, a relationship of the heart. He knew beginning that being honest with God was the beginning of getting his heart back on track. So he came to God with an honest heart. Now here's David's prayer. It's point number 2. David asked for 3 things. Consider me, David said. Consider me. Look on me. Don't forget me. Look on me. Secondly, hear me. Hear me, O Lord my God. He affirms that relationship in the middle of even his lament. And then thirdly, enlighten my eyes. Not so much enlighten me to show me what you're doing, but rather put the light back in my eyes. Give me health and healing in my heart. It's like what David prayed in Psalm 51. Restore to me the joy of my salvation. David's really struggling, and that's why you see the word lest there, because he's afraid of one of 2 things is going to happen. Either this was going to kill him or his enemy was going to win. And for David, for the enemy to win, it would defame the name of the Lord. It would defeat what God's purposes were, and that would be unthinkable. But you know, I find sometimes that my biggest fear is that Satan's going to overcome and overwhelm my heart. And I don't want the enemy to win. So David prays. And then David's pain, David's prayer, David's perspective. We see that in verses 5 and 6. David's perspective. But I have trusted in your mercy. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. Talbot calls this in his book, taking a breath. You've exhaled all of these questions and all of these fears and all of these frustrations. And he said, now take a breath. Inhale. And you need to inhale the promises of God's word and inhale the goodness of God's character. He says the psalmist caught their breath by reminding themselves that their help always came from the Lord. Now you look at this and you say, what's changed? I doubt very seriously this was a postscript. I don't think David said, well, I'm going to keep this psalm in my hip pocket, and one day when this is all resolved, I'll come out and write the last 2 verses. No, this was a declaration of faith. He said, I've trusted your mercy. Mercy, hesed in the Hebrew. It's the Hebrew word for God's unfailing, loving kindness. It's that covenant love of God. The Jesus Storybook Bible calls it the never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love of God. Now, like I said, David hadn't been delivered from his problem. He still has questions here, but David is able to say, even though there's a bunch of stuff I don't understand and that I can't explain, I'm going back to what I know. And so David mentions these 2 promises of God's steadfast love and God's salvation. And that's what he's clinging to. There's a God who knows me, who knows everything about me, and yet he is still with me. There's a God who is steadfastly, forever committed to me. And what David is doing is he's inhaling the truth of God that he knows. He's remembering his experience with God and the faithfulness with which God has dealt with him in the past. And he says, I don't know the when, I don't know the how, I don't know the way, I don't know the place, but God knows. And in that, I will sing to him. And doesn't it seem sometimes that our issues and our problems take our breath away? We don't breathe. And at some point, we have to breathe in the evidence of God's truth. We have to inhale the evidence of God's and the remembrance of God's faithful action in the past. It was found on the wall in a concentration camp. One of the prisoners wrote, I believe in the sun even though it doesn't shine. I believe in love even when it isn't shown. And I believe in God even when he doesn't speak. In Isaiah 49, God's people were feeling just like David. In verse 14 of Isaiah 49, it says, "But Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me. The Lord has forgotten me." You know how God responded? He said, "Can a woman forget her nursing child and not have compassion on the son of her womb? Surely they may forget, yet I will not forget you. See, I have inscribed you on the palm of my hands." Paul knew that. In all the midst of what he went through, he said, "I'm persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate me from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus." So breathe that in this morning. Don't just exhale your questions. Inhale the truth of God's loving kindness. And just say, "God, I know that your steadfast love will meet me here in this need." David just concludes that God will be as good as his promises and his faithful action of the past. Now, does that mean that God said, "I'm going to get to work and got that done right then"? No. You know what David said later? He said, "Commit your way to the Lord and trust in him. He will act. Be still and wait patiently for him." And I guess the author of Hebrews puts it all in perspective in the 11th chapter as he gives us all of those men and women of faith, and he summarizes it in chapter 12 when he writes that we should run with endurance the race that's set before us, looking unto Jesus, who's the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the Father. Sometimes, you know, the best benefit of our lament before God is it leads us to remember that Christ, through his death and resurrection, has purchased for us a new world, a new heaven, a new earth, where there'll be no more death, no more tears, no more pain, no more lament. And so David concludes, and he said, "I will sing to the Lord, because he has dealt bountifully with me." The NIV says, "I will sing to the Lord because he has been good to me." Now, I don't know if David was saying that he would sing right that moment, or the day would come when he would sing that God had delivered him. But either way, the point is well taken. God has been good to us. Amen? Every day. Every day. So if you're asking the same questions that David was asking, then maybe this morning you just need to take a moment and take a breath. Just breathe in the promises of God's truth. Inhale the reality of the never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love of God. So let's pray this morning. In the midst of the how longs, that we may ask, let us breathe in the wonderful promises and loving kindness and forever mercy of God. That in the middle of it all, we can come to the conclusion that I will sing of the goodness of God. That we can sing to the Lord. Because we look at the cross and we see what God has done for us in Christ. And we say, if he has done that, can I not trust him in everything else? Whether I can understand it, whether I can explain it, I will sing of the goodness of God. And this morning, maybe you need just to come to faith in Christ. That in the midst of all of this, and I don't have any grand notion that is all of what I say, but is maybe just the Holy Spirit has worked in your life to remind you that whatever it is you're going through, God loves you. And that God has provided you for you through his Son. And you just humble yourself. Acknowledge that you can't save yourself. There's no way. We all know that if we ever get honest. That it is only through what Jesus has done through his death and resurrection, of paying for our sin, dying in our place, defeating death. And so you come to him and receive him. And in receiving him as your Lord, you give him your life. Father, I pray today for those who are listening, and I pray, Father, that you would just affirm in us your loving kindness and your goodness, that in the middle of whatever it is in life that we're going through, whatever we want to call it, you deal bountifully with us, that you're good to us. Give us the strength and the faith to bear our heart to you and then just to give it all to you. As we pray in Jesus' name.